So activity 8 is about the overtime premium. Now, last week I have discussed something. If you remember, I said like the overtime and the overtime premium is a completely different thing. So you need to be a little bit careful with these two words, because in the exam, some student, they can be confused and they can end up with the wrong calculation. So when the question said overtime and the overtime premium is a two different thing. Now, when I said overtime, that means working the extra hours, how much I earn. For example, let's say the normal hourly rate is £10 and the overtime rate is times and half. So if I work 1 hour extra, I get £15. So that is my overtime hour. Now, if the same question asks you, how much is the overtime premium? So overtime premium means how much I'm getting extra, the difference between the basic rate and the overtime. So my basic rate is a 10 anyway. So the premium means how much I'm getting extra. That is only £5. But I have seen the student in the exam, they do sometimes £15. They said like all the £15 is the overtime premium. It is not. Remember that overtime premium is the difference between the overtime and the basic rate, because £10 will get anyway by working 1 hour. So if I work 1 hour, I'll get £10 anyway. But if I work overtime, I get 15 for 1 hour. That means I'm getting extra £5. So premium is £5. So this concept has to be on your head for the exam, because if you just multiply and take all the overtime as overtime premium, you'll end up with the wrong calculation. Okay, let's try this question now. Activity 8 for the overtime premium. Mark worked from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. So he worked from 8 to 5 with 1 hour lunch break. With 1 hour lunch break. His normal working hour is 9 to 5. So every day he worked normally 9 to 5, but one day he worked 8 to 5. 1 hour lunch break is always there. Normally the lunch break is unpaid, so do not consider the lunch break hour. His basic wages is 15 per hour. So normally if he work 1 hour, he get £15. Overtime is paid at time and half. Overtime is paid times and half. Times and half means 15 times 1.5. It will be more than the basic rate. So if we said overtime rate will be 15 times 1.5 times and half. So how much it will be our overtime rate? 22.5. 22.5. Very good. Now we didn't go inside of the question yet. We're just trying to make everything ready so that based on the requirement, we can look at the calculation. The first requirement we have here, calculate the basic pay, then overtime premium and total wages. Three things. The first one is basic pay. And the next one, only the overtime premium, not the overtime premium. And finally, the total wages. That means if I added these two, that will be the total wages. Now let's have a look, the basic pay. How much will be the basic pay? So he worked 8 to 5 with 1 hour lunch break. So how many hours he worked that day? Anyone tell me how many hours he worked that day? 8 hours. So 8 hours he worked that day, not 7, is 8 hours. 8 to 5 with 1 hour lunch break is 8 hours. So 8 hours. And with 8 hours, I'm going to multiply with what rate? I'm going to multiply with 15. Very well done. I'm going to multiply with 15. And if I multiply with that, it will give me how much? 120. Very good. Now the basic payment is £120. Do not make a mistake like, oh, he normally work 9 to 5. That means 1 hour he work extra. So 1 hour is the overtime. And so the basic hour will be 7. No, basic hour is not 7. Basic hour, the time you working. The question didn't ask you for the overtime. The question asked you for the overtime premium. Basic hour means how many hours you work. Doesn't matter it is within your time or out of your time. So how many hours you work, it is your basic payment. Basic payment 15 per hour. If I work 10 hours, 20 hours, I have to multiply with that. If I getting anything extra because I work on the premium rate, that will be the premium. Very careful with that. Now this is my basic payment, that is 120. The next one, looking for the premium. Who can tell me how much will be the premium here? The premium is 7.50. I can see almost everyone giving me the right answer. Very well done. That means you understand the difference. So now the premium rate was 22.5. And out of 22.5, my basic rate is 15 anyway. So for 1 hour, I'm getting only 7.5 extra. I'm not getting £22.50 extra. I'm getting only £7.50 extra. And for that reason, that is my overtime premium. All right, so how much is the total wages for Mark for that day? So we need to add these two. Basic pay plus the premium, and that will give me 127.50. Very well done. All right, any question from this one from anyone? Overtime premium. Yes, Sabira. Overtime premium means if I work as the overtime hour, how much I'm getting extra. For example, the question said my basic rate is 15 per hour. So anytime I work, daytime, evening time, weekend, per hour, I'll get minimum 15 anyway. But they are saying if you work outside of your normal working hour, you will get time and half. So this is your overtime rate. Now, if I work 1 hour extra, that is normally I finish a 9 to 5, but I started 1 hour early, 8 a.m. I started. So that means it is outside my normal working hours. So this is 1 hour is overtime. For 1 hour, how much I'm getting? So I'm getting 1 hour, I'm getting 15 times 1.5. They said for overtime, I'll get times and half. So that gives me 22.5. But is 22.5 is not extra because normally for 1 hour I get 15 anyway. So the difference is 7.5. This 7.5 is the overtime premium. So premium means the difference between the overtime rate and the basic rate. Maria, you said, I think the total wages for the date should be 144. Why you think should be 144? What is your calculation? The lunch break is not paid. Remember that the question said 1 hour lunch break, it is unpaid. So it is 8 hours working. So if you work 8 hours, so 8 times 15, that gives you 120 basic. And for 1 hour, you get 7.5. So that will give you 127. Do not take 9 hours because 1 hour is the lunch break. So for that day, you work only 8 hours. Within 8 hours, 1 hour will get with the overtime. Got it, Maria? Not yet. So you can see here, the question said he worked 8 to 5. How many hours here, 8 to 5? So 8 to 5 is 9 hours. And from 9 hours, if you minus the 1 hour lunch break, so it's 8 hours. So for the whole day, he worked only 8 hours. Out of 8 hours, 7 hours he will get the basic rate, and 1 hour he will get overtime, because normally he worked 9 to 5, only that day he worked 8 to 5. That means he started 1 hour early. So for 1 hour, he will get the overtime rate. So for the 7 hour, you can see the basic rate, and the overtime rate is times and half. So we have a 7 hours times 15, then 1 hour times 15, because 15 he will get anyway. And for the 1 hour time 7.5, because this 7.5 is the extra. Overtime is 22.50 exactly, that's correct. But the question asking for the overtime premium, not the overtime. They're asking how much is the premium. Premiums means only the extra, the difference between the overtime and the basic rate. We are not calculating the overtime, we are calculating the overtime premium. Make sense? Happy with that, Maria? How do you calculate the total wages for the day? So the basic pay we have, let me clean a little bit. So the basic pay, for, let's say for example, if I go your way, the way you are saying, so if I go 8 to 5, it is 9 hours, minus 1 hour is the lunch break. So 8 hours is the working. Out of 8 hours, 7 hours is the basic. So 7 times 15, how much it is? 7 times 15. And we have 1, so 1 time 22.5. So this is 22.5. And this is 7 times 15. So if we do 7 times 15, that will give you 105. So if you added this to 105 plus 22.5, it will give you exactly 127.5. Same thing, isn't it? There is no way we'll get 144. Got it? Very well done. No problem. So this is a little bit tricky concept, because we mix it up sometimes, the overtime and the overtime premium. Don't mix it up. Okay, so let's move to the next one. The next one we have here, activity 9, and it's a job. Remember that if I have a specific job, that time even the overtime will be the direct cost. Normally overtime is the indirect cost, but if the job for any specific reason, or if the job for a specific work or a specific contract, only that time even the overtime is our direct cost. Normally it is indirect, remember that. For example, if I make the pen, and if I make a lot of pen together, I have a pen business, and in this business, if someone work extra, that will be overtime, and it will be overtime will be the indirect cost. But if someone work, like for example, if someone said like, can you build a house for me? So you're not making a lot of house at the same time. You're making one house based on the design provided by that person. So that means you are working on one specific order. Or let's say someone said like, can you build a furniture for me, and he give you a design. That means you are working on one specific order. So if this is the case, you are not making a batch, you are not making so many identical item at the same time. So that time even the indirect cost will be treated as a direct cost. So you need to be remember that, because normally the overtime is indirect cost unless you are working on a specific project. Here the question said the following data relate to job 146. That means I'm doing only one job number 146. So I'm not making so many identical items at the same time. I'm working only one project. Total direct labor hour work 45,000. So 45,000 is the total direct labor hour work. Basic hour 12,000. So you can understand easily, if total working hour is 45 and if the basic is 12, the difference is the overtime hour. So you understand it very easily. Basic rate is 7 per hour, and the overtime premium is 25% of 7. Overtime premium is 25% of 7. So it's quite straightforward. Requirement: calculate the direct labor cost for job 146. Assume that overtime is worked at the specific request. The question mentioned you very clearly is work for the specific request of the customer. That means it is not our indirect cost. So calculate the basic pay. Overtime, again the premium, not the overtime premium, and the direct labor cost for job 146. So let's try to do it together. So can we calculate the basic pay, everyone? So let's see how we calculate the basic pay. I can see everyone have 315. So let's see how we calculate the 315. So total working is 45,000 hour, 45,000 hour. And for 1 hour, the basic rate is 7. So I'll get this basic rate anyway. Remember that. Total, we worked 47 hours. So for 47 hour, minimum will get 7 per hour anyway, because this is our basic rate. Basic means the minimum rate. So that will give us 315. Very well done. 315. So this is our basic pay. Very good. The next one we have the overtime premium. How much is the overtime premium? We have to find the difference between 45,000 minus 12,000. And this is my overtime hour. And for the overtime hour, I get how much per hour? Remember the premium. How much per hour I will get? I will get 1.75. So I'll do times 1.75. Now, how did you get 1.75? That is 25% of the 7. So 7 times 25%, it should give you 1.7. So if I multiply with that, how much is the premium is coming? 57,750. Thank you very much. 57,750. And if I added this to, how much will be the total? So we have overtime premium, that is 57,750. All right. That gives me total 372750. Very well done. 372750. 372750. Okay, so this is my total direct labor cost. Now you can see like why we're taking even the overtime premium inside of the direct labor cost, because this order is specific order. Remember that. If the question did not mention this word, it is for a specific order. Remember that overtime premium always indirect cost. We cannot take inside of the direct cost. Because of this information, we have to take this one as a direct cost. Please remember that. Have you happy with that? Any question from this one? From anyone? All right, let's move to the next one then. The next one we have the activity 10. Let's try that. Component C. So the following information relates to skill direct labor cost incurred in producing 500,000 unit of component C during January 2016. So our unit is 500,000 unit. Normal time our work 5,000 hours. So normally we work 5,000 hours. Over time at time and a half 2,000 hours. So for 2,000 hour over time, the rate is time and a half. For 1,000 hour is a double. Normal rate is 10. overtime premium paid are included as a part of the direct labor cost. The question tells us take the premium as a labor cost, as a direct labor cost. That's fine. So let's take this one first, the 5,000 hour. For the 5,000 hour, the rate is 10 pound per hour, 10. So that will give us how much? 50,000. So 50,000. The next one, 2,000. Again, I'll take 2,000 times by 10. That will give us 20,000. And the 1,000, I'll take again 10. Remember that basic rate is always different. Basic rate is always same regardless how much is the premium rate. So that will give us 10,000. So that will give us total 80,000, the basic pay. Now the question said for the first 2,000 overtime hour, I'll get time and half. So how much will be the premium for the 2,000 hour? So it's a 2,000 hour, 2,000 hour, and it says time and half. So time and half means like we have 10 times time and half. That means it will give me 15. And my basic rate is 10. So I'm getting premium per hour is actually 5, isn't it? I'm getting premium actually 5. So 2,000 times 5, the premium will be 10,000 for the first one. How much will be the premium for the next one? I said the double. So we said 1,000 times 10, isn't it? And it will give us 10,000. The same way that we calculated, we can calculate the same way. So we have 20,000 here. This is the premium. And if I added this two, because they said the premium will be part of the direct cost, and that will give us how much? 100,000. Remember, even if you do normal way, like 5,000 times 10, 2,000 times 15, and 1,000 times 20, it will give you the same 100,000, but your workings will not be correct. So 100,000. So the first question said total cost of direct labor, the first one. So it's a total cost of direct labor 100,000. And the next one it says direct labor cost per unit. Who can tell me how much it will be? Direct labor cost per unit. So it will be 100,000 divided by, we have 500,000 unit, divide by 500,000. And that will give me how much? 20 pence per unit. That's it. All right, any question from this one, from anyone? Normally the overtime portion come in the exam, so you need to make sure you practice well so that you understand and remember how to calculate the premium. Why the premium for overtime double time is for 10,000? Because you can see here they said for the overtime for the 1,000 hour is a double. So if the normal rate is 10, that means for the double will be 20. So for the 1,000 hour, the rate is 20. Rate is 20. Now out of 20, 10 is the basic rate and 10 is the premium. So I'm getting for every 1 hour, I'm getting 10 as a premium because they make it double. 10 is the basic I'll get anyway, even though I work anytime, 10 is a fixed for me, is the basic, the minimum, but I'm getting 10 extra for the last 1,000. So 10 times 1,000, it will give me 10,000. Got it, Maria? All right, let's move on to the next one then. The next one we have here, the wages control account. This is not very common. It is for your level 2 thing. So you can revise if you want, but it will not come in the exam. Okay, this is the end of the chapter. We'll move to the next chapter now, chapter number 4. Chapter number 4, we have about the allocation and apportionment. So very important chapter because we'll see the question in the exam from the chapter number 4 and 5. Let's look at the chapter overview. Let's have a look what we have here. The first thing we need to know, what is absorption costing, what is a apportionment, what is a reapportionment, all of this. So let's try to understand a little bit before actually you start. Now, it is possible one business have a different department, and it is very common. Think about the BMW car. Now, do you think all the car parts they make in one building? No. Let's say the body made by one department, the engine make maybe somewhere else or maybe another building, and maybe the assemble is happening in another department. So that means every building have a rent, every building have a business rate, every building have a electricity bills. But if you try to understand, the whole cost belongs to BMW as a whole, but individual department have individual cost. Now, for example, let's say in one building, we have a 3 floor, and one floor belongs to office, one floor belongs to the production center, and one floor belongs to, for example, the canteen. Now, try to understand. Let's say the first thing is salary. Salary for office staff. Office staff, 10,000. Now, I know very clearly, it is very clear for me, this salary belongs to the 3rd floor people for the office. So I can allocate this 10,000 directly to the office department. I said, oh, this salary belongs to you. Because of your department, you are paying 10,000 salary. So this salary belongs to you. So take it. I allocate the cost to them. And then next thing, for example, supervisor salary for production, 5,000. Now I know this 5,000 belongs to the production department. So I allocate 5,000 to production department. So what my point is here, if I already know this cost belongs to that department, we called it allocation. We called it allocation. Allocation. Allocation means I already know this cost belongs to that department, so I can transfer the whole cost to that department. Now, the next one is called apportionment. The next one is called apportionment. What is apportionment? Now, for example, for the whole building, the rent is £3,000. Now, the question is, can we transfer the 3,000 to the office? Can we transfer the 3,000 to the production? Or can we transfer the 3,000 to the canteen? No. If we give the whole amount to only one department or any specific department, they will not be happy. They will say, listen, this rent is not only for me, for the whole building. There are 2 more departments also involved. So why am I going to bear all the rent? So no one department going to bear it. For that reason, we cannot allocate it. So we cannot do the allocation for that. So for that reason, we have to do something called apportionment. apportionment, apportionment. Now, what is apportionment? Is split it, divide it to every single department who are using this building. Now for this 3,000, we can give 1,000 to the office, 1,000 to the production cost center, and 1,000 to the canteen, and they will be happy. They'll only be happy if they use the same amount of space. Remember that. Now, for example, if the canteen use only little bit space, and if you give them £1,000 rent, they will say, listen, the top two floor, they're using the whole space. I'm using very little space. Why are you giving me the equal amount of rent? So they will not be happy. For that reason, to do the apportionment, we need to use the suitable basis. Suitable basis. For the rent, we can use the square meter. So let's say if the total rent is 3,000, and we need to look at how many square meter the whole building. And we have to divide with that. We have to find the cost per square meter. And after that, we have to give the rent to the specific department, and they will have no question. The last one, we'll talk about this is called reapportionment. Reapportionment. Reapportionment means like after the portion, we have to do it again. So first we apportion it, after that we reapportion it again. Now you might thinking, why? If we already apportion it, what's the point we have to reapportion it? There is a reason behind. The reason is some of the cost center, they don't have an income. For example, the service cost center. Let's say the BMW, when the car is completed, ready to sell, what happened? They keep the car in the showroom. And this showroom, they don't have an income because all the income coming from by selling the car. So the store they have, they pay the rent, the salary, and the bills. This one don't have any sort of income. So now, if this service center cost, if you do not include on the production department, that means we'll end up with loss. For example, let's say we have a for example production and we have a service. Now both belongs to BMW. Now let's say to make one car, I was just talking about one car, we can take the example for a lot. So let's say to make one car, the cost is £5,000. And obviously the car, after make it ready, we have to keep on the store and the salesmen need to sell it. And they have a service department cost, another 2,000. Now let's try to understand. If I sell this car, for £6,000, am I making any profit? Because the cost is 5,000. If I sell it for 6,000, am I going to making any profit for that? Now it is a very much tricky to understand, like because the cost is 5, and if I sell it for 6, that means I'm making a profit 1,000. But the answer is no, because if I sell it for 6,000, from where I'm going to cover this 2,000? Because this 2,000, the cost of the service department, it is happening because of this car. So this 2,000 cost, I have to reapportion to the production department. So all the service department cost, I have to reapportion back to the production department. So I'll say, no, my production cost is 5, is okay, but I have 2,000 service department cost. So my actual cost is 7. So if I can sell more than 7, only that time I can make a profit, otherwise we'll make a loss. For that reason, we have to do reapportion. So we understand reapportion means moving the overhead cost from service department to production department, because the service department don't have any separate income. All right. The next thing we like to know, something called absorption of the cost, absorption of the overhead. Now, what is absorption overhead? Let's try to understand that. Now, for example, at the end of the year, my overhead means all the indirect cost. For example, rent, bill, everything. Let's say all the indirect cost we have. So we have, for example, total overhead cost. And let's say we have 10,000. And let's say we make 10,000 units. For example, you make 10,000 pen. So you have to divide with the 10,000 unit. So overhead per unit will be £1. This is a simple calculation. So all the overhead later on, I have to split to the units. All the overheads later on, I have to split over the units, because at the end, all the cost will go every single units. Now the question here is, the business sometimes have a different variation. So sometimes the business depends on the labor hour. Sometimes the business depends on the machine hour. So the question will tell us what sort of business it is, and the businesses depends on machine or labor. Because overhead, most of the time the question will ask you, absorb it either using the labor hour or either using the machine hour. The unit one will be very, very less. So you need to be careful with that. In the exam, either it will ask you absorb the overhead by using the labor hour, or absorb the overhead by using the machine hour. Now, how do I know which one I'm going to use? The question will tell me very clearly. For example, let's say, if the business is depends on the labor. For example, let's say the McDonald's. In McDonald's, the people has to work. So they have a lot of people that work at the same time. In a production center or garments where there's a lot of people involved, they're working. So you understand, we need more labor hour. And business like, for example, the printing machine. So let's say there is a 20 printing machine, and only one person, he operate all the printing machine for the printer. So it's look like this business is machine intensive, not labor intensive. That means this business will be depend on the machine hour, not labor. For that reason, we have to use the machine hour when you're going to absorb the overhead. Now, how we absorb the overhead? So we have a formula that we have to remember. We call it OAR, overhead absorption rate. Overhead absorption rate. So on the overhead absorption rate, on the top, we're going to write budgeted overhead. On the top, we're going to write budgeted overhead. Under, we're going to write budgeted activity. Budgeted activity, both are budgeted. Remember that. None of these are actual, both are budgeted. Now, budgeted activity. Now, budgeted overhead will be given in the question, nothing to worry. Now, budgeted activity is a little bit confusing. Now, budgeted activity means, the reason they said activity, because it could be labor hour, it could be machine hour, and it could be the unit. It could be one of these. So by reading the scenario of the question, we have to decide what it is. We're going to practice some question anyway. We'll understand it. For the time being, this is our basic concept. The one more thing that we're going to discuss, that is called under or over absorbed. Under or over absorbed means, did I absorb more or did I absorb less? Now, what does that mean? That means when we have overhead, this is my estimated. Remember that all the management, they do the budget based on the estimated figure. Budget means something will happen in the future, the planning for the future. Now, let's say I'm making a plan for next 3 months. So I said my overhead absorption rate will be, let's say, 10 per hour, or let's say total overhead absorbed will be 10,000. Now, I cannot find the difference between the budgeted and actual unless this 3 month period is over. So after the 3 month, if I see my actual overhead is a 12,000. So I absorbed 10,000. It was my estimated, it was my plan, it was my calculation based on the overhead absorption rate, but the actual is 12,000. So that was the budgeted overhead absorbed, overhead absorbed, and this is actual. Now there's a little bit trick here. I want all of you to focus here and concentrate. So if my overhead absorbed was 10, and if the actual is 12, it's a look like, so we have a two option. Is it under absorbed or is it over absorbed? We have to choose one. Now it is look like it is over absorbed. It is look like it is over absorbed because my plan was 10 and the actual is 12. That means it is more than my expectation. It is more than my plan. So it is over absorbed. But remember, it is not. The question will be opposite. So the question you have to ask yourself, question we have to ask ourselves, did I absorb more or did I absorb less? This is the question. Did I absorb more or did I absorb less? So here I absorb less because the actual is 12. So I absorb only 10. So it will be under absorbed, not over. This one I have seen a student, they done a lot of mistake during the exam time because they didn't understand it. They think like, oh, my absorption is less and actual is more, so it is over, but it is not over. It is under because you have to check your estimate. Did you absorb less or more? If it is less, it is under, not over. Very careful with that. All right, so that's okay, Savita, because we are just discussing now. Obviously, like when you do the question, I'll explain again. Here we are talking under absorb and over absorb. So absorption means like the total overhead. And of course, like if I absorb less because it's my plan, I make the estimate before the actual. So I make a plan for the next 3 months. So I said next 3 months, my overhead will be 10,000. And after 3 months, if I see my overhead is more than 10, that means I absorb less. This is under absorb. And if I see after 3 months, it is 8,000 and I absorb now 10. So that means it's over absorbed. But we'll do some question, we'll understand anyway. All right, let's move on to our next step. So we'll see what we have here. Okay, there's some definition, allocation, apportionment, but we already discussed that. I think we'll be fine, fair enough for that. So let's have a look. Okay, so let's talk about the first activity, activity 1. So I'll give you 5 minutes. Can you find the answer for that? Then we'll just solve it together. So we have this one, wages of the supervisor of department A. So what will be this one? This one we allocate to department A. Very well done. Allocate to department A because this salary wages belongs to department A. So I know easily I can allocate it. So I said allocate to department A. And the salary belongs to them. Wages of the supervisor of department B, we can say allocate to B because this department, the salary belongs to this department. Indirect material consumed in department A. So we said allocate to A because this cost belongs to you. Rent of the factory is shared by the department A and B. This one cannot be allocated. Can't be allocated because both of them sharing the building, so no one will be willing to pay the rent for the whole factory. This one cannot be allocated. This one you have to do apportionment. Apportionment split it. Happy with that? Any question from this one? Anyone? All right. Now let's look at this one, the apportionment. So when we cannot allocate the cost, we have to use the next technique. The next technique we have, that is apportionment. Now the apportionment, we have to use the suitable basis. For example, for the building cost, for the rent, rate, repair, insurance, heating and lighting, we can use the floor area or the space occupied by the cost center. So we can say like, okay, for the rent, rates, electricity bill, heating, so how much area you are using, based on that, you have to pay that. So it will be more fair. So it will be more reasonable basis for the apportionment. The canteen cost, if we have a canteen cost, we can look at number of employee using the cost center. That means how many people eating from this canteen, or how many meals, or how many people are there. So based on that, we can find it out how much is the canteen cost per meal or per person. Equipment costs such as insurance and depreciation. So if we have this one, like for example, the equipment cost, for example, machinery or something, or that the machinery insurance or depreciation, this one we're going to use the carrying value cost, or the carrying value of the equipment, or the net book value. So carrying value means cost minus the depreciation. So we need to look at how much was the carrying value or book value of the asset. Based on that, we have to apportion our the machinery cost, or the insurance of the machinery, or the repair of the machinery, or depreciation of the machinery. Maintenance cost, normally we use the uses of the maintenance department. Now let's say, like for example, you have a maintenance cost 10,000, so we need to know which department they use the maintenance. So for example, if one department they never use the maintenance, we should not give the maintenance cost to them. So I need to look at which department using the maintenance. We have to find it out, and based on that, we have to apportion the maintenance cost. So there's a suitable basis, but looking at the question, you will be able to understand what is the suitable basis for apportionment. Let's look at one question. Maybe we'll be more clear for that. So let's have a look this one. Activity 2. Say pick and choose the most appropriate basis of apportionment for each cost. From the pick list, choose which one is suitable for what. So I'll give you 2 minutes, quickly have a look, and then we'll solve it together. First one, we have a rent, rates, and insurance. So we're going to use the floor space. Yes, that's the most suitable one. The next one, we have heat, light, and power. Again, the floor space, this is the most suitable. Depreciation charge of machinery. We're going to use the carrying value. Very well done. And the canteen cost, we're going to use the number of employees. Very well done. Okay, so I think more or less you understand what does that mean, the suitable basis. So now we can do maybe one question. So let's look at one question. We have one more activity 3. Let's quickly do that. I think like this is also easy the way we done before. Just take a minute, have a look. Then we can just solve it. And after that, we can move to our one question. The first one, we have a rent and rates. For the rent and rates, we're going to use our floor area. Then you have a depreciation. The depreciation, we're going to use the net book value or the carrying value of the equipment. So carrying value of the equipment. Then you have a staff canteen cost, number of employee, heat and lighting, again the floor area or volume space occupied. You can use that. Insurance of the equipment, value of the equipment, store cost. Store cost belongs to store cost center, allocate. All right, now let's do one question actually to see how we're going to apportion all of this. Can you explain why you use the volume of space for heat and light? Basically, they give us one option for each. That's why we take it. Normally, if you don't have this one, space occupied or the floor area, you see this one, they give both. Even if you choose the floor area, it will be correct, but obviously they give both. So you need to just choose one. That's why I took. Okay, so let's try this one. Activity 4, we have an overhead apportionment. Let's try that one. The company has incurred the following overhead cost for a period: factory rent, factory heating, and then we have a processing department supervisor, packing department supervisor, depreciation of the equipment, factory canteen expense, and we have a welfare cost of the factory employee. Now we have a 3 department: processing, packing, and canteen. Now we can see here a few costs is very much like we can allocate. For example, the first one, we have a canteen, factory canteen expense, 18,000, and this one will go to straight to canteen. We can allocate it. Then we have a processing department supervisor, 15,000. This we can take it straight away to processing department. And we have a packing department supervisor, 10,000. It will go straight away to the packing department. With these 3, we can see very clearly this cost belongs to that department. So you don't have to apportion it. Something it is belongs to everyone, like for example, rent, heating, then depreciation, welfare of the employee. So this thing we have to be apportioned. Okay, let's have a look. What else we have? So we have some information about the cubic square meter. So the floor space we have for the processing department, they use 50, packing they use 25, and the canteen they use 5. So you need to add all of this, 50 plus 25 plus 5, so it's going to be 80,000 square meter, isn't it? So you need to divide by 80,000 and times by this department, this department, this department to allocate the rent, rates, this and that. The carrying amount of the equipment, we have a 300,000, then 300,000, then 100,000, that's 700,000. So you need to divide with 700,000 and times by 331 to find it out, like for the equipment depreciation. Number of employee is for the staff welfare. We need to add it all of this. After that, multiply with 50, 40, 10 to give the right department. All right, so we cannot see all the question together. So we need to go back one by one. Okay, let's start with these 3. Canteen is 18, then packing is 10, and processing is 15. So let's do the allocation first. Okay, the first one is a canteen. So we're going to say canteen is 18,000 total. And all the canteen cost belongs to canteen because we have canteen here. That is 18,000. We can allocate it directly because we said this cost belongs to you. The processing department supervisor, this is total 15,000. And this 15,000 belongs to processing department. So you can allocate that. We said this is your cost, your department cost. And the packing department is 10,000. And you can say 10,000 is here for the packing. So these three we can actually allocate. Now we need to go to the rent. So let's look at the rent. How much is the rent? If you look at the rent, our rent cost to us 20,000. So this 20,000, we have to use this floor space, 50, 25, and 5. And we have to split between the three departments. So let's do that. So the rent we have, that is 20,000 total. And this 20,000 you have to split between three departments. So let's do that. We said 20,000 divide 80,000 square meter total. And for the first one will be our processing department. I think it was 50. So if you multiply by 50,000, how much it is? Can you have the figure? 20 divide 80 times 50. It will give you how much? 12,500. So 12,500 for the processing. Same thing we do for the packing. So packing was 25,000 square meter, isn't it? Go back, you can see for the packing, they use 25,000 square meter. So we do the same thing. So we do, this time we'll multiply with 25. That will give us for the packing. So for the processing, now how much it will be? 20,000 divide 80,000 times 25,000. That will give us 6250. Finally, for the canteen, it is 5,000. So multiply by 5,000. So 20,000 divide 80,000 times by 5,000. And this will give us how much? 1250. Very good. All right, that's how we will apportion. The next thing we have a heating. We're going to follow the exactly same thing. How much is the heating we have? The heating cost we have 5040. So heating cost 5040. 5040. We have to split using the square meter. So I'll give you 1 minute. Can you do the calculation and tell me how much is the heating cost we're going to split between these three departments? Very well done, Aisha. So we have 3150, 1575, and 315. Very well, well done, Peter. So we have a 3150, 3150, 1575, and we have 315. The same story the way we did before. So we do 5040 divided by 80,000 times by 50,000. Then we do times by 25 and times by 5,000. Same story. All right, the depreciation. Now into the depreciation. The total depreciation we have 7,000. So this 7,000 you have to split by using the carrying amount of the equipment. That is 3, 3, and 1. That is 7. So let's do that. So we have total 7,000, the depreciation. And this 7,000 we have to split in these three departments. So 7,000 divide 7 times by, I think 3, it will give you 3,000. Then times by 3 again, 3,000. And times by 1 is 7. Times by 1 is 1,000, isn't it? So that is 3,000, 3,000, and 1,000. So very simple. Then you have a welfare. How much is the welfare? The welfare is 5,000, and we have to use the number of employee. Number of employees 50, 40, and 10. 50, 40, and 10. So welfare is total 5,000. And we do the same way. We do 50, 40, and 10. So we need to add it, divide by that, times by that, it will give you the same thing. So 2,500. Then 2,000. And 500. Thank you, Shuleka. All right, so that's how we need to split or apportion all the cost. And after that, we can add it, the total, to find, like, just to make the total. So any question from anyone from this one to understand how to do the apportionment before we move to the reapportionment? Anyone have any question to understand how we split that? All right, very well done. Then let's move to the next one then. The next one we're going to look at the reapportion. This one we talked earlier. Reapportion means the service department cost. Later on we move to the production department. Now for the reapportion, we have a two method. We have an indirect method and we have a step down method. So we have a direct method and a step down. We can see indirect, same thing. So let's look at the direct method. What is the direct method? The direct method, let's look at the quotient first. So we have a two department, production department, and we have a service department or service center, whatever you said. The production department is the cost of the product or machinery, it could be anything. But the service department, they don't have an income. So their cost is for example, for the store, for the maintenance, and for the admin. So these three costs, later on, we have to move to the production department because they don't have an income. This costs part of the product cost. And for that reason, we have to move all the service center costs to the production cost later on. Now we have a two method. One is direct method and one is the step down method. What is direct method? In direct method, we allocate the service department cost straight away to the production department. For example, the store will go either X or either Y or maybe both, half. Depends what is the question said to us. Maybe the maintenance will go to Y or X or maybe half, and maybe the general overhead will go X or Y or half. That means these three will be zero. This three will be gone. This three will be gone. Because all these three will be moved to either X or Y or maybe equally split. Depends on the question. This is the direct method. The indirect method is a little bit different. Indirect method or step down method is, for example, the maintenance 15,000. From the 15,000, let's say 10,000, like 5 and 5 will come to the production and another 5 will come here, for example, in the service. So this will be gone. And the new general overhead will be 6 plus 5, it will be 11,000. And later on, this 11,000 will go to here. So what we understand, the direct method, the service department cost will be moved directly to the production department. But the indirect method or step down method, the service department cost will be split with all the department, like production and service both. And later on, the production service department cost will be increased because some portion of the one department cost will be split with another department. And later on, we have to move it. So the direct means, like, direct method is service department goes straight away to production department, but indirect or step down method, first one department is split to all the department, even service, then after that it will move to the production, but eventually it will move to the production. Anyway, let's look at the example. Maybe we'll understand more after. So in this question, they are saying here, using the following data, reapportion the overhead of the store and maintenance, general admin overhead to production department, X and Y using the direct method. This is this is the two method is it depends on the organization, Aisha, because there is a lot of organization follow in order to calculate the overhead. Now, for example, the depreciation, we have a two method. Let's we have a straight line method and we have a diminishing balance method. Now, there is no restriction by law. You can choose for your company to use a straight line. I can choose for my company diminishing balance. If someone said, I like to use the direct method because it's more suitable for my company, someone can say, no, I like to use the indirect method or the step down. So this is two method is allowable. The way we value the inventory, for example, some company can use the average method, some company can use the FIFO. So it depends on them. I don't understand the indirect method. We'll go to indirect method, Mariam. Don't worry about that. So for the time being, just to understand, the service department costs need to move to the production department because they don't have any separate income. So this is the part of the cost of the production department. All right, so let's read this question for the direct method first. So we have using the following data, reapportion the overhead of the store and maintenance and the general admin overhead to production department X and Y using the direct method. So we have to move the service department cost to the production department. Now you can see allocate and apportion overhead. So we have 70, 30, 20, 15, 6. This is already allocate or apportioned. So first is allocation. The next step is apportionment. The third step is a reapportion. Now we have to reapportion. The value of the machinery, they said 8,000 for X and 7,000 for Y. Let's try to understand now. This is 62% of the store department. So 62% of the store department, 62% of the store department will be time spent on the production department X. So 62% of the store department time will be split on the production department X. Okay. The remaining time is spent on the production department Y. So that means this is store cost 62%. I'll take it to the X. And from 20,000, rest of that will go to Y. So that's how I'm going to split or move the store department cost to the production department. The next one is that the maintenance costs are to be apportioned between the production department on the basis of the value of the machinery. So that means the maintenance, we have 15. This 15 we're going to split based on the 8 and 7. So 8 plus 7, that gives me 15. 15,000. So we'll say 15,000 is the maintenance. So 15,000 divide 15,000 times by 8 for X and times by 7 for Y. So it will be actually again 8,000 and 7,000. So this 15,000 will be 8 for the X and 7 for the Y. The general admin overhead to be apportioned equally. That means 6,000, 3,000 will go to the X and 3,000 will go to the Y. Very simple is this. Let's do it now. Let's do it together. So let's do it. First we do our overhead. The allocation, we have 70,000 is already given. So 70 for X, 30 for Y. For the store, it is 20,000. For the maintenance, 15,000. General admin, 6,000. Let's do the store first. Store 62% will be X, and the remaining will be to the Y. Can you tell me how much is the 62% of the store? 12,500. 12,500 is for the X, and 7,500 for the Y. Thank you very much. And this will be go. So you need to minus 20,000 from here. And this is gone. Rear portion of the store. Then the rear portion of the maintenance. Now the maintenance, they said use the value of the machinery. So we need to do that. So we do maintenance is 15,000. So we do 15,000 divide by 15,000. And this 2 is 15. And times by 8,000 times by 7,000. So it will give you the same figure, isn't it? 8 and 7. 8 and 7. And then maintenance will be gone. And finally, you have a rear portion of the general admin. So it's equally 6,000, you have to make equal. Equal means 3,000, 3,000. 3,000, 3,000. And 6,000 is also gone. That's it. So that means now my new production cost will be for the X, we added all of this, that will be the total. And for the Y added all of this, it will be total. And this will be now 0, 0, 0. There is no more service cost here. So we reapportion all the service cost to the production department. All right, any question from this one from anyone before we move to the step down? All right, very well done, Savita. So let's move to the next one then. So the next one we have here, the step down method is quite simple as well, but we have to just a little bit understand. Same thing. So we have a production, X and Y, we have a service, 2 department store and the canteen. So 50% of the store department time is spent on the X and 30% is on the Y, 20% on the canteen. So you can see this one, this store is going to X, going to Y, also going to canteen. Before, from the service, only straight away going to production. Now from the service, even portion of cost going to service as well. This is called step down, nothing else. And they said the canteen are cost to be apportioned between the production department basis of the number of employee. So based on the number of employee, how many employees we have. So we need to see how many employees we have. We have 45 plus 50. So for X and Y, we have a total 95 employee. 45 plus 50 is 95. So 95, we'll do 45 for the production and 50 for our Y. Okay, let's do it, then we'll understand it more. So first we're going to allocate. So we have a 70,000 and 30,000. We have a store 20,000 and canteen 15,000. Okay, now can we do the store first? 50% will go to X. So 50% means 10. 10,000 will go to X. And then 30% will go to Y. So Y will be 6,000. And and the 20% will be in the canteen. So the canteen will be 4,000. That's it. So this 20 will be gone. This 20 is gone. Then we have a portion of the canteen. The canteen will be based on the number of employee, basis of the number of employee. Remember that when you do that, we only consider X and Y. We don't take the store because the store is finished, store is gone. Do not consider the store employee. So only consider the X and Y. So the canteen cost we have now 15 plus 4. We have a new canteen cost now. This is 19,000. Remember that. It is not anymore, what's that called? It is not anymore 15,000. It is now 19 because 4,000 came from the store. So the 19,000 divided by 95 and times by 45 and times by 50, and that will give you how much? So 19,000 divided by 95 times by 45, that gives you 9,000. So 9,000 for the X, and for the Y it will be 10,000. And that's it. So it will be minus now 19,000. The store is gone, the canteen is gone. So this will be 0 and 0. And here it will be a new production cost for X, new production cost for Y after adding. So this is the only difference. On the step down, you can see the store also split between production and also this service. But the direct method from service is straight away to the production. All right, any question from this one, from anyone? All right, very good. Then let's take a break. Let's take a half-an-hour break. When you come back, we'll start with our next chapter. This is the end of the chapter. So when you come back, we'll start with our chapter number 5. I'll see you at 8 o'clock. And let's take a half-an-hour break. So the next chapter we have, that is the absorption costing. And this is a very much a link to the chapter we have just done. So it will be kind of the same story that we're going to see, but we're going to look at some method from this chapter. So let's have a look at absorption costing, what we have here. Now, the first thing that we discussed before, that is OAR, and that is overhead absorption rate. So as we said, like on the top, it will be the budgeted production overhead, and under it will be budgeted activity level. Now, the activity level could be the labor hour, could be the machine hour, or could be the unit. It could be any of them. The next one we have here, under or over absorbed. So we need to calculate, is it over or under absorbed? Are we going to see it? How does it work? And then the next thing, we have a few more methods. We have a calculation of the product cost. We'll look at that. And we have activity-based costing. Activity-based costing, or ABC, it's not very common in the exam, to be honest. It's not very common, activity-based costing or the ABC, but there's only one question we have in this chapter. We can try that, but it will be not in the exam. It's never came to the exam, so it will never come. But you can always do that. All right, so let's move on to our the area we have to focus on. So as I said last time, so the budgeted overhead or overhead absorption rate will be depend on the scenario of the question. So we have to find it out. We have to decide, is this the activity level, is the machine hour, is it the labor hour, or it is the unit? This depends on the question. So let's have a look at the activity 1, overhead absorption basis. So OAR, that is overhead absorption rate, and the formula you already know, OAR, overhead absorption rate, that is budgeted overhead, and divide with the activity level. And the activity level could be labor hour, could be machine hour, or could be the unit. Now let's read this scenario. It said M Limited or Mars Limited has 2 production department, mixing and a string. They have a 2 department, mixing and a string, in which it makes a variety of the product. It makes a variety of the product. So you have a direct labor hour, and you have a mixing department 20,000, and a string department 5,000. Then you have a direct machine hour, mixing department 2,000, and the string department we have 60,000. Based on the above information, what are the most appropriate overhead absorption base for the mixing and the string department? So if we look at the scenario, it's not very difficult to understand. So it says mixing department. So overhead absorption rate should be based on what? Should be based on machine hour or should be based on labor hour? What do you think? So for the mixing department, we can easily see 20,000 is the labor hour and 2,000 is the machine hour. So what do you think? This mixing department, this business heavily or intensively depends on the labor hour, not the machine, because they're using 20,000 labor hour and only 2,000 machine hour. So you can say the overhead absorption rate should be based on the labor hour. So budgeted labor hours. The next one is says the string department. That one is says labor hour is 5,000 and machine hour is 60,000. So labor hour is 5,000 and machine hour is 60,000. So we understand we need a lot of machine hour. We need a lot of machine hour for the string department. So the next question is string department overhead absorption should be based on machine hour. So budgeted machine hour. So you understand from the scenario, we'll be able to understand is this overhead absorption rate will be depend on the machine hour or the labor hour. All right, let's try the next one. The next one we have here another question. They said like overhead absorption rate, how to calculate this one. OAR, overhead absorption rate. Budgeted information for department A is as follows. Budgeted overhead 40,000 and direct machine hour 2,000. So budgeted overhead is 40,000 and direct machine hour is 2,000. Calculate the budgeted overhead absorption rate per machine hour for department A. So calculate the budgeted overhead absorption rate per machine hour for department A. Can we calculate that? How much is the OAR for that? All right, so we can see it is 20 per machine hour. So 20 per machine hour. Is everyone happy with that? It's just very simple. 40,000 divide 2,000 because budgeted overhead is 40,000 and overhead we have that is machine hour, that is 2,000 activity level. So 40,000 divided 2,000 is gives us 20 per machine hour. Okay, now the next one is very important. If you have a pen and paper, you can write it down, this one, the formula to learn. Every time if you see this one, formula to learn, that means we have to remember this formula. Remember that it will not be given in the exam. We have to remember that. So how we calculate or how do we find it out? Amount absorbed. How much is the overhead absorbed? How do we find it out? So we have an actual production activity times OAR. Actual production activity times OAR. That means overhead absorption rate. So you need to find it out how much is the actual production activity. That means it could be actual labor hour, or it could be actual machine hour. So it could be actual labor hour or it could be actual machine hour, both. So, and times by the overhead absorption rate, the rate we have calculated here the same way. Remember that we have to multiply with the actual production activity, not the budgeted. So when you're going to calculate overhead absorbed, then you have to use the actual production activity times OAR. Now, actual production activity means actual labor hour or could be actual machine hours, depends. All right, let's move on. Then we have some formula here, some example, but we will do the question straight away because we know how to do it. So let's have a look at this one. It's activity 3. Overhead absorption rate, OAR2. Mars Limited has a 2 production department, mixing and string. Mars Limited has 2 production department, mixing and string, in which it makes a variety of product. Budgeted overhead are 10,000 and 15,000 respectively, and the following budgeted information also allocated. So we have an overhead 10 and 15. So 10 and 15 is total 25,000. We have an overhead, and we have some information for the activity level. So we have a direct labor hour for the mixing is 20,000, string is 5,000, direct machine hour 2 and 60, number of unit 10 and 10. It says calculate the appropriate overhead absorption rate for both mixing department and the string department. So mixing department OAR, so mixing department overhead absorption rate, and string department OAR, string department overhead absorption rate, how much it will be. Can we calculate that? The first one we need to do for the mixing department. So let's do that. The mixing department, the formula here is we need to do OAR. The formula for that is budgeted overhead divide activity level. Now the budgeted overhead for the mixing department, they said for the mixing department is 10,000 and for the string department is 15,000. So it is 10,000 for the mixing department. And we have to divide by which one? Because mixing department depends on the labor hour, because you have a more labor hour. So we need to divide by 20,000. So the overhead absorption rate will be how much? 10,000 divided by 20,000. So it will be 50 pence per labor hour. So it will be our mixing department overhead will be 50 pence per labor hour. Why is labor hour? Because mixing department fully depend on labor hour. We use 20,000 labor hour. The same thing we'll do for the string department. String department overhead is 15,000. So we said 15,000 is the budgeted overhead. We have to divide with the activity level. And in this time, we're going to use the machine hour because 60,000 is the more machine hour we're using for the string department. So it says 60,000. So 50 is 60,000 hours. So 15,000 divided 60,000, it will be 25 pence. 25 pence. So it will be 25 pence per machine hour, because this department depends on the machine. All right, so any question from this one, from anyone? We are going slowly a little bit in the detailed question. So every single step is important, because if you go straight away to the big question, it's going to be a bit difficult. So if you understand the little steps, it's going to be easy for us when you do the main question. Okay, then we have activity level 4. We have activity 4. It's the overhead absorption rate in the service sector. Okay, Bus route X11 has told budgeted overhead is 130. So we have one. We always need the budgeted overhead. So budgeted overhead is 130,000. The expected mile travel for the year are 325,000. So expected mile, that is 325,000. Calculate the appropriate overhead absorption rate. So we do 130,000 is the total overhead. And for how many mile? 325,000 mile. So how much will be the overhead absorption rate per mile? So it will be 40 pence per mile. Very well done. Okay, the next topic is a little bit sensitive. We have here under or overhead absorption of the overhead. So it is very much important to understand, as I said before. So we'll go over one of the examples to make us clear. If you have any question, you can always ask, so we can discuss. So look at this example. I'll give you 2 minutes. Just read this example, then we'll read it together. Well, so if you read this one, the first thing we need to understand how to calculate the OAR. So you can see this one, they said the budgeted overhead 15,000 and the machine hour is 30,000. So the machine hour per machine hour, the overhead absorption rate is 50 pence. We understand that. So OAR, that is 50 pence per machine hour. So you understand this one because we have done some calculation as well. Now let's look at the next story. They say in year one, the actual overhead is 15,000. So actual overhead is 15,000 and actual number of machine hours is 30,000. So remember, we said the overhead absorbed, the formula is actual activity times the OAR. So actual activity times OAR. And that gives us basically the overhead absorbed. Now, actual overhead, the question said 15,000 and overhead absorbed, that is actual activity times by OAR, that is overhead absorption rate, and this 15,000. So we don't have any under, don't have any over, and it is nil. So that means what was my estimation, what was my plan, what was my budget, it is exactly matched with my actual result. But this is a very much unlikely is going to happen. You cannot estimate 100% your overhead. You cannot say like for the next quarter, my overhead will be 500 and it will be exactly 500. Remember, it's a very hard to guess like the overhead figure. So normally it will be always overhead under or over. On the next scenario, it says, for example, my actual overhead is now 16,000, not 15. And the actual number of machine hour is 29,000. So what is happening here? So 29,000 is the actual activity level and times by OAR, that is 50. And that gives me 14,500. So overhead absorbed is 14,500. But the actual overhead is 16. So as I said, do not look at the actual overhead and do not compare with the overhead absorbed. So we absorb overhead 14,500 and the actual is more. Do not think like the actual overhead is more than my plan. Don't think that, because we don't look at that way. We need to ask ourselves the question, did we absorb more or did we absorb less? This is the question. So here we absorb less because actual is more, 16,000. So we absorb less. If we absorb less, it will be under absorption. If we absorb less, it will be under absorption. So this one is a very much careful to think. We have to compare the overhead absorbed and the actual overhead. So overhead absorbed, how we calculate that? Actual activity times by OAR, that will give us the overhead absorbed. We compare with the actual. If we absorb less than the actual, it will be under absorbed. If we absorb more than actual, it will be over absorbed. All right, let's have a look at the next scenario. The next one is says here our actual overhead is 14,000 and the actual machine hour is 32,000. So 32,000 times OAR, that gave us 16,000. So we absorb 16,000, but the actual overhead is 14,000. So that this time we absorb more. We absorb more than the actual. This time we absorb more than the actual. If we absorb more than the actual, it will be over absorption. That's why 2000 is the over absorption, the difference. Okay, I think we have now a little bit idea the difference between the under and over absorption. Now I'll do some questions so it will be more clear after. Okay, try this question. So it says activity 5, overhead absorption. It's a Pumpkin Limited provides you with the following budgeted information for its painting division. Total overhead. Very careful with the budgeted and the actual. Very careful. So this following information is budgeted. So total overhead is 400,000. Total overhead is 400,000. Total budgeted direct labor is 3,200. So budgeted direct labor is 3,200. Budgeted machine hour is 10,000. Calculate the budgeted fixed overhead absorption rate. So OAR, have to calculate that using the direct labor. So first one, I'm going to calculate OAR using the labor hour. So it will be 400,000 divided by 3,200. The next one is OAR, calculate the OAR using the machine hour. So that will be 400,000 divided by 10,000. So it will be the overhead absorption rate per machine hour. Then number C is saying the painting manager inform you that the painting division is highly automated. Remember, this is a clue, this is a hint for you. Highly automated means this business is not depends on the labor. This business is depends on the machine. If the question give you this sort of clue, like this business is highly depends on the machine, automated, then you need to understand this business is depends on the machine, not the labor. Highly automated depends on the machine. Operate with the expensive machinery with a run whenever possible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So this machine is continuously keep moving and keep running. That means obviously this business depends mainly on the machine hour. Which of the two overhead absorption that calculated A and B above would be most appropriate? So you can see easily this from the question clue we can understand the most suitable one will be the machine, because this is highly automated. The machine is keep running for the whole day, whole night. So they very much like tell us like this business is depends on the machine. So is it okay? That's fine. Okay, so the next one we have here, that is our the next information. So that one we have for number D. At the end of the accounting period, now we're looking for the actual one. At the end of the accounting period, the painting manager provides you with the following actual data for painting division. So this is the actual data. To find it out, it is over absorbed or under absorbed, we have to know the actual data. So total overhead, this is all actual. Remember that is actual, total direct labor actual, total machine hour actual. When you calculate the under or over absorb, we need to take the actual activity times by OAR that we calculated before. So we now have a 4 requirement. This is a 4 requirement, basically A, B, C, D. We have to do that. So let's do this one. The first one we do our OAR per labor hour. Let's do this one. Activity 5. So we have the first one, 400,000. The budgeted overhead, 400,000. And we divide with the labor hour, 3,200. And that gives me how much? 125 per labor hour. Very well done, Jack, Sabira. So 125 is our labor hour. The next one is number B said based on the machine hour. So let's do that. 400,000 divide 10,000, and that will give us 40 per machine hour. Very well done. And then number C is saying, number C, if you remember, we said like this is highly automated, and they're asking which of the two OAR calculated A and B would be most appropriate. So what do you think? Which one will be most appropriate here? Who can tell me that? Which one will be more appropriate? So it will be machine hour, isn't it? So 40 per machine hour. Very well done. And finally, the most tricky one, is it over or under absorb? So let's try to find it out. So now we need the actual activity. Actual activity means the hours. So you can see we have actual machine hour and we have actual labor hour. So we need to find it out how much it is. So the machine hour is the most appropriate. Number C, we have decided we'll go for the machine. Number C, we have decided we'll go for the machine. So we need to take the machine hour. So machine hour is 12,562 and times with OAR for the machine, overhead absorption rate for the machine, we said 40 times by 40. So this is my overhead absorbed. So if you multiply that, how much it is? 12,562 times by 40, and that will give us 502 480. So this is my overhead absorbed. Remember that. Overhead absorbed. This is the one I absorbed. This formula is very important. Actual activity times OAR, overhead absorption rate. And then we have to find actual. How much is the total actual overhead? 521. So actual is 521,262. So how much is the difference we have here? 18,782. Okay, so who can tell me, is it under absorbed or it is over absorbed? It is a under absorbed, because I need to ask myself, this is my one, isn't it? I have to ask myself, did I absorb more or less? This is a simple question we have to ask ourselves. Did I absorb more or less? If I absorb less, it is under absorbed. If I absorb more than actual, it will be over absorbed. So I can say actual is more than I absorbed, so it will be under absorbed because I absorb less. So you're going to say it will be 18,782. We're going to choose under absorb. All right, any question from this one, from anyone? Where do we get 502? So this is the formula, Mariam, we have used. If you see that, this is the actual activity level, 12,562, and the OAR, overhead absorption rate, is 40. So 12,562 times by 40, that will give you 502,480. Any more question from anyone? All right, very well done. The next question we have the same thing, under and over absorb. So I leave this one for your homework, activity 6. If you cannot do yourself, ask me next week, we can discuss together. but it's the same under and over absorb. So I hope you'll be able to do it. So activity 6 will be your homework. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And the recording will take maybe 2 days to upload, but before Monday it should be uploaded. Because to convert the video and go to the EMS portal, sometimes it takes some time, but it should not take more than Monday. So you will definitely see the recording by Monday every week. All right, let's try our next activity. How did you find the recording, Jack? You have to log into your EMS portal and click on the courses. Then you click the subject, management accounting, and you'll see all the recordings will be there. Even the books and the question bank, everything will be there. But as I said before, you should have your all the books. It's very important to have the hard copy of the book. And obviously, like it is a very important, like to have your all the books. If you need help to get the books, you can email me. I'll help you to order the book for you. You will get it by next 3 days, Jin. So obviously you'll get it by next 3 days. So hopefully before Monday. The previous lesson is already there. For this one, you will see by Monday. It will be there by Monday. Next 3 days, it should be there. It will take some time, Miriam. So sometimes it takes some time with the delivery, but if you order, it should come. Sabina, of course, like you need to order your book from the BPP, or if you want me to tell the admin team to make an order, I can do that for you. But you need to send one email to me, then I'll tell you what to do. Then I can make the order for you. And it's better to order all the book together because you need it anyway, so you can save the delivery cost. I gave my email address before, but let me write again. Okay. No, it's not the first lesson, Jin. We are doing the second lesson. All right, so let's carry on our session. Maybe we'll talk about the quotient later on. So okay, so that's fine. So let's try this one, activity 7. So we have Merce Limited has the following overhead absorption rate. So let's try to do this question. It's the mixing department. We have 50 pence per labor hour. Shrink department 25 pence per labor hour. Mars Limited has a product, the Venus, for which you obtain the following information. Direct material per unit 5. Direct labor hour for the mixing 2 hours, for the string 0.5 hours. Direct machine hour for the mixing 2 hours, for the string it is 6 hours. Labor is paid £8.60 per hour. Okay, let's try to do this question. What is the total cost of this product? So let's try to find it out, the total cost. So start with the direct cost. The first one we have a material. So the material cost, the question give it to us. Direct material cost per unit is 5. It's very easy for us, 5. The next one is the labor. Now we have a labor hour for the mixing and string. So let's have a look how much it will be the labor cost. So labor, we need 2 hours for mixing, and for the string we need 0.5 hour. So let's try to find it out. So we need 2 hour and 2 hour, and per hour is £8.60. 8.60. So it will be 2 times 8.60. It will be 17.20. And for the string, now for the string, it says 0.5 hour. Now, very careful with that. Very careful with that. Now, when you read the question, you can see here, like we have a overhead absorption rate as well. So when you do the overhead, we have to use that rate, not the labor. So for the string, we need 0.5 hours. So we said 0.5 times 8.6. So how much will be the labor cost for the string? So it will be half. So 4.30. So this is the labor. Now the overhead, I'm going to use the overhead rate. Remember that OAR. So for the mixing department, and the mixing department is 50 pence per labor hour. So for the mixing department, I'm going to use the labor hour. So 50 pence per labor hour. How many labor hour I need for the mixing department? I need 2 labor hour. So I said 2 times 0.50. 50 pence means 0.50 per labor hour, and that gives me 1. For the string department overhead, string department, they say 25 pence per machine hour. So how many machine hour we need? For the string department, we need 6 machine hour. So we said 6 times 25 pence per machine hour. 25 pence. How much it is? 6 times 25 pence, it will be 1.5. So 1 plus 1.5, it will be 2.5. And if we added all of this together, so my total cost will be 5 plus 17 plus 20 plus 4.30 plus 2.5, and it will be 29. Isn't it mixing 2 hours for the overhead? No, it's a mixing is, yeah, mixing is 2 hours, isn't it? We put 2 here, isn't it? So 2 times 0.50, yes, Trupti. So the mixing is 2 hours, yes. But with the overhead, very careful, they said mixing department 50 pence per labor hour. So we need to multiply with the labor hour. And the string department 25 pence per machine hour. So that's why we took the machine hour. Don't take this one, 0.2, because the mixing department depends on the labor hour. Very careful with that. You can see here very carefully, they said very clearly the overhead absorption rate for the mixing is a labor hour basis, and for the string is machine hour basis. All right, is there any question from this one, from anyone? Any question from this one? All right, very well done. So let's move to the next one then. The next one, we have a accounting for the overhead. This one is not very important or not very common for the exam, but we can do one question. It's a journal, debit and credit. I'm sure all of us, we know how to do the debit and credit, but just quickly do this one, activity 8. So it says the production overhead is 6,000, and the production overhead absorbed into the production is manufacturing department 4, finishing department 6, quality control 5. So from the production department, total overhead is 6,000 and absorbed to this 3 department, and total absorption is how much? 4,000 plus 1,100, so 5,100. So our actual is 6,000, but overhead absorbed is 5,100. So we can see we have an under absorption because we absorb less. So we have an under absorption. The difference between these two is 900. So the 900 is under absorption. So we need to show how we record it on the ledger account. So first we need to do the journal. So let's do the journal. When you have a production overhead, first do the first journal. So the production overhead is a debit. Production overhead is a debit, that is 6,000. So you're going to charge 6,000. And the payable account will be credit. Remember that payable is always credit. So payable, production overhead control account. So production overhead control account, or the payable account. Payable control account will be credit 6,000. Okay, the next one we have for the absorbed, this amount 5,100. So here we're going to say our production overhead control account will be credit and production control will be debit. So production control account will be debit 5,100. And we have a production overhead control account. Production overhead will be credit 5,100. Now this information we need to record on the ledger account. So the first one we have payable control account. So payable is a credit. So on the credit side, we're going to write the production overhead. Production overhead, that is 6,000. And the production overhead control account. Production control account is our production account is a debit. So on the debit side, we're going to write debit. So on the debit side, we're going to write payable. Payable as 6,000. The next journal we have for the production overhead. So it is our credit. So on the credit side, we're going to write all the absorbed. So you're going to write for overhead absorbed. Overhead absorbed. 6,000 actually we charge on our accounts as an expense, but actually we absorb. You can see for the manufacturing department is 4,000. Then finishing department is 600. And the quality control is 500. This is total 5,100. Total 5,100 we have here. And the difference between these two is our under absorb. And because of that, it will go to the profit and loss account, 900. Remember that because of the over and under absorb, our profit and loss account will go up and down. We're going to see later on what is the impact on the profit and loss account because of the over and under absorb. Now, if I absorb more, that means my expense will be more. And if the expense is more, the profit will be less. Now, if I absorb less, that means my expense will be less and the profit will be more. So there is impact always because of the under and over absorb. There is always impact on the profit and loss account. All right. The next one we have the inventory control, so production control account. Here we're going to write the production absorbed 5,100. But it's just a journal. It will not be in the exam. You can revise to understand it, but it will not be on your exam. Okay, the next one we have, that is activity-based costing. Now, this one also, like, it is not common in the exam, to be honest, but we will do one question. We have one question we can practice. It's a big question. It's look like big, but it's a very simple. If you do this question, you will understand how simple it is. But if you look at the question, you can see how big it is. But nothing to worry, it will be not in the exam. And this question is quite simple. Let me explain to you, and let's do it together. You'll see how simple it is. So activity 9, activity-based costing. So having attended on the AT course on activity-based costing, you have decided to experiment by applying the principle of ABC to the 4 products currently made and sold by your company. Detail of the 4 product and relevant information are given below. So you have a 4 product, P1, P2, P3, and P4. Output unit, this is the unit we have produced, output unit. 120, 100, 80, and 120. Then have a cost per unit, direct material 40, then 50, 30, 60, and direct labor of 28, 21, 14, and 21. Now, we need to look at one more thing that is called cost driver. So we have overhead cost. This is all my overhead cost. It's all the overhead. So setup cost is the overhead cost. The store receiving is the overhead cost. Inspection or quality control is the overhead cost. Material handling is the overhead cost. So this is all overhead. And we have some cost driver to apportion this overhead. Before we use only two activity level, we use either the labor hour or either the machine hour. But here we have a more cost driver. So for example, for the setup cost 5250, we're going to look at number of production runs. So how many times the production is run? So you have to divide with that. So number of production run we can see from here. So we have a 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 6 plus that will give us 21. So what we have to do, we have to do 5250 divided by 21, then times by 6, times by 4, times by 4, times by 6. So that's how we'll do it. The next one is store receiving. Store receiving is the requisition raised. So store receiving is 3600. So it depends on how many requisition we have. So you can see the requisition 20 plus 20 plus 20 plus 20 it gives us 80. So 3600 divide it by 80, then multiply by 20, 20, 20. Very simple is this. Number of order executed. So we have inspection or quality. So number of production runs, same thing, the first one. And material handling and dispense, order executed. So we need to see how many order it is, 12, 10, 8, 12. This gives 42. So this divide 42 times by 12, 10, 8. So that's how we'll do it. It's very simple is this. Let's do one by one so we'll understand it. Let's do the first step. The first step is says fill the table to calculate the cost per driver for each overhead cost. Okay, it's very simple. Let's do that. So first we do our setup cost. So let's do the setup cost. How much is the total setup cost? And it depends on the production run. So total setup cost is 5250. And the setup cost is a link with the cost driver. They said number of production run. So we said, okay, how many production run we have? Let's have a look. So we have a setup cost. It is a 5250. And number of production run is 21. So how much would be the per production run? 250. Very good. The next one we do for the same thing is store receiving. Total store receiving cost is 3600 from the question. And this set is a link to the requisition raise. How many requisition? 80. So divide by 80. The next one is the quality control. The inspection cost is 2100. Divide by, it is linked with the production run. So it will be again divide by 21. And material handling, the total cost is 4620. And it says link with the order executed 42. That's it. So the production 250 per production run. Can you do the next one? Per requisition raise. How much is the per requisition rate? And for all okay. So we have 250 and we have 45 and we have 100 and we have 110. Thank you very much, Vida. Okay, the next one is says, using your answer from A, calculate the overhead cost for each product. Now I have to know how much is the cost for each product. So very simple. So the first one is cost per production run. So cost per production run, you can see the cost per production run is 250. So I need to write 250. So 250, 250, 250, and 250. So now in C, P needs 6 production run, P2 need 5 production run, P3 need 4 production run, and P4 needs 6 production run. So can we calculate that now? So P1, that will be 6 times 250, and that will give us 1500. Then 5 times 250, that will give us 1000. 1250, so that is 1250, and so we have 1000 here, and we have 1500 here. That's it. So this is our information we have. Okay, so this is the next one. The third one will have the same thing for the requisition. That will be for the requisition. So 45, we have to multiply with 45 for everything. So if you go there, have a look. So number of requisition. So we need to multiply per requisition cost was 45, 45, 45, and 45. So all you have to do, you have to multiply with that. The next one is a production run. You can see the production run, it will be our 100, 100, 100, and 100. And the last one is for the number of order executed, 110, 110, 110, and 110. So you can see it's a quite simple. It's a big question, but it's a very simple. Nothing to be worried about. But this question will not be on your exam anyway. So after that, all you have to do, you have to make the total cost. So if we go here, you have to write how much is the direct material, how much is the direct labor, and the production overhead, and the setup, store, inspection, and material handling that we have calculated now in all boxes. We just need to bring here to find out the total cost. So this one, I'll leave your homework as well, just to complete that. And if you have any difficulties, so we can do it next week together. But it's a very simple, as I said, and also this question will be not in the exam, so don't worry too much, but it's just to understand how does it work. So you have an answer at the end of the book, you have an answer of this question of everything. So you can see the answer to check you are doing right way or wrong way. But if you have any question, write it down for me. We can always discuss that. All right, so I think this is the end of our chapter number 5. So next week we can start with chapter number 6, and we'll carry on from there. All right, so any question from anyone before we finish today? Anyone have any question? Right, very well done, everyone. It's a very good, but make sure you start revising from the very beginning. Don't leave the book, and after that, before the exam, don't try to do it everything together. So every week when you practice, make sure you practice before you see me next week. And there are some questions called test your learning. So at the end of the chapter, you have some test your learning. Try that question as well by yourself. And also there is a question bank. So question bank is very important. You need to have your question bank. You need to practice some question from there as well. So start revising from now. So once you complete this course, you will be ready for the exam. All right. So if you don't have any questions, so we can say thank you very much for joining me today, everyone. So see you next week, same time. And we'll meet 6 o'clock next Friday. Thank you very much.